Hi, this is On Imagination with a Healing Garden. And this is a philosophical coffee. No, it's not. It's shifting perspectives. I just finished reading a book called The Wave by Todd. Last name, please. Strasser. I am writing my book, and about 4 hours ago, I had this massive I wanted to analyze the Nazi regime to figure out what the fuck they did wrong with psychology to circumvent that from ever happening again. And I spent the last 4 hours making notes. Brainwashing does not exist. Not at all. Not at all. In all of the things I have studied, Stockholm Syndrome, which I've had, brainwashing does not exist. What happens in those circumstances is a severe case of identity displacement. It is codependence. It is absolutely codependence. It is a severe case of defining the self by an outsourced third-party source. A religion, a loved one, a boyfriend, a movement. And then self-preservation kicks in. The self-preservation is this is mind-blowing. I just finished the book like 10 minutes ago. My head is still reeling. When your identity is inside of you, you can use your boundaries to protect your identity. You can use discernment to protect your identity. When you are your identity, you have tools inside of you to protect the identity from exposure, so you can walk around without a problem. But when you displace your identity and your identity exists in a third party on the outside, there is nothing that can protect your identity. It's equivalent to having your heart literally outside of your chest and being carried around by somebody else. You can't just use discernment then to protect your identity, which is out and about. It's exposed. It's exposed on such a level. So self-preservation then kicks in. Now, if it were inside of you, you would just use boundaries, authority, self-authority, and it'd be fine. Discernment. But when it's outside of you, your self-preservation does what the self-preservation does. The problem is control of others is now required because your identity is now on the outside. So the requirement of controlling all others instantly goes high. Now, the reason why you have your identity on the outside is because you lack trust, which is why your identity is on the outside to begin with. When you lack trust and you need to control others, that creates a very unique cocktail. That cocktail requires authority, and it requires hierarchy. As soon as you create hierarchy, you create a requirement for conformity. The requirement for conformity ensures that people on the outside can now be identified as friend or threat. Now, you're going to require enforcement. to ensure that those who don't conform are controlled. The best way to control those who are not conformed is with enforcement. Well, now you have the beginning of the Nazi regime, don't you? It's just codependency. It is just a group effort of codependency. It's what happens when codependency expands beyond just two people, and it expands to an entire group. At one point, at the end of the book, they talk about brainwashing. And brainwashing is hypnosis. Hypnosis is brainwashing, except inside the brain, when you talk about what's going on during brainwashing, what you are actually doing is basically planting subliminal messages inside of the subconscious mind, buried in the fourth level, with a type of PTSD trigger. This is brainwashing. It takes highly skilled, knowledgeable people who actually know what they're doing regarding hypnosis in order to manipulate the subconscious mind at this level. I do not condone hypnosis. It's powerful and fucking dangerous. To play around with the subconscious mind's fourth level, that's fucking stupid. I don't even do that because I understand and appreciate how sensitive the subconscious mind is, and it is a form of manipulation. It is a fact that there is no such thing as unconsciousness. Even when you are unconscious, your subconscious mind is most awake, picking up everything and learning. You cannot manipulate the subconscious mind without the subconscious mind knowing that it's being manipulated. Hypnosis is manipulating the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind knows it. So when you hypnotize, you are fucking with the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind knows it. That is a recipe for disaster. If you are wanting to heal from trauma, fucking and manipulating your subconscious mind is going to create a real problem. Don't do hypnosis. That's brainwashing. Marketing is brainwashing. It's a type of hypnosis. It's conditioning your RAS system without your consent in a form of manipulation. That is brainwashing. That is not fascism. Not at all. That is not Stockholm Syndrome. That is not your ex-husband brainwashing your kids. It's called self-preservation. And it is because the identity has been displaced, moved to an outside source, exactly like fascism. Codependency is a form of narcissism. Nazism is just a form of narcissism. Except their identity is conditioned and completely dependent upon a hierarchical system where an authority is now required to enforce conformity, to sort out those who are compliant from those who are not. And if you are not compliant, you pose a threat to the outside external third-party projected identity, the movement, or the religion, or pick something. That's codependency. There's no brainwashing. It's self-preservation. What's interesting most is at the end of the book, it is when fear results in compliance to preserve safety. So you had people who divided. A schism was forced because of the hierarchy and the authority enforcement. As soon as that occurs, you are immediately forcing an entire system to behave in a conform or you're an enemy of the state mentality. And the people fall into one of two pieces. Either you are afraid to even speak. Fear is what violates freedom. And when fear results in compliance to preserve safety, well, now you have obedience, which a lot of people see in their own homes. And when fear in losing the defined self depends on the compliance and obedience of others, Enforcement and a leader is now required. I had a word for all of this when I was writing it all down. Two very, very specific words. The system is hierarchical conformity. Hierarchical conformity is found in religion. It is found in politics, communism, fascism. Hierarchical conformity is found in patriotism. Equal individuality is actually what is required and what should be aspired to. People confuse conformity with equality, and that is one of the biggest problems. Conformity is not equality. As soon as you have a hierarchy, you've destroyed equality. It's not possible to have equality so long as there is a hierarchy. It's not possible. They are incompatible. Likewise, when you have a hierarchy, it is literally designed strategically to sort out the obedient versus the non-obedient, which is why the schism exists today between the conformists and the non-conformists, which is why an individual is so absolutely adamant about equality, because individuality for equality is adamant that you can preserve safety, ethics through equality while maintaining your individuality. When I put all of this together, in this book, The Wave is based on a true story. Back in the 1960s, 1969, a high school teacher was teaching World War II in his history class. And the teacher, after showing a concentration camp video footage, the children wanted to know how the fuck it could happen. And he said, I don't know. I remember asking the same question in my history class when I was in high school. How? And I realized today, hey, I've got ontology. I can just read this book and figure out the psychology. And so the teacher, true story, put together this experiment, and he put his students through the experiment. It got out of hand. And he literally, accidentally, created the Nazi regime in the entire school. And it was such a terrifying thing that this teacher created that it did not get talked about. Todd Strasser wrote this book depicting it. And it's mind-blowing. And this was again in 1969. I remember about 5 years ago, I was watching a clip on the news, or it was like a feed in my Google feed. And an old gentleman from Germany had held up a sign at a Trump rally that said, "This is Nazism. I've seen this before." And the article that I read proceeded to explain from this German's point of view what Nazi Germany was like. And he drew out the parallels between our current system and Nazism. Needless to say, the article really shook me up. And it occurred to me today that I could read this book and figure out what the fuck happened. And when I did, I watched and I followed the entire layout, the process. I spent a lot of years studying Hitler also. And I mean, probably, oh my God, when I was obsessed with war movies. studying Hitler and the 10 years, the 20 years, World War I, all the history prior to World War II, the lead up, the Nazism that took place here in the United States, the concentration camps in the United States. Yes, they existed. I wanted to know why, what happened, how. So I did a lot of research then, but I wasn't looking for the psychology back then. I was looking at the sociology. Oh, let me rephrase that. I was not looking at the ontology. I was looking at that time at the sociology. And at the end of this book, there's a comment. Oh my God, they're brainwashed. No, that's not brainwashing. That was self-preservation. Self-preservation to the point where when you have this perfect formula, truly it's a formula of self-preservation with a hierarchical system with assigned authority enforcement and the need for that enforcement to preserve your identity, which is now on the outside. You'll pull whatever strings you need to ensure your own safety because that is self-preservation. The problem is, as soon as you appoint authority, it goes from being consensual to non-consensual. The moment you assign somebody in charge, the game changes. The whole thing changes. Exactly as it did in the book. Precisely. There is this moment where as soon as he puts law enforcement, game changed. Because he violated the hierarchy. It went from equality to hierarchy. And in order to ensure you have hierarchy, you need enforcement because you lack trust. Because now it's about controlling to make sure that people obey the rules. What they're really obeying is the conformity, not the rules. I'm in the fourth perspective, which is all about personal law, personal order, personal rule. And if you don't trust, you project that personal law, personal order, personal rule onto others. Now, if you have a third-party identity, you are absolutely going to require control over others and a phenomenal, flawless system to highlight exactly who is a threat to you. Either they're obedient or they're not a threat. And conformity is the best way to sort out the threats. So it's really important that everyone conforms so you know who is a threat. Families revolve around this system. Religions revolve around this system. Narcissists revolve around this system. Hitler revolved around this system. Fascists, communists revolve around this system. Monarchs revolve around the system. Hierarchy and conformity is a filtering system that uses enforcement to identify the disobedient. Self-authority, self-identity, knowledge learning is literally the cure to this. They weren't mindless. They were just starved for belonging. And they clung desperately to the very first thing they could find that would give them meaning. Exactly. Like in World War II. It's really important that you have a self-defined, your own belonging, your own purpose. Thank you for your audience. May the kindest of words always find you.